Hey, what's up, you guys? How's it going? This is a quick, hopeful audio check. I'm sure people will start to let me know if technical issues are coming up, but welcome again for our next round of just live sketching, hanging out, chatting for a little bit, doing some art talk, as I also do some card breaks and whatnot. And again, we'll keep this an open session just to converse and to hang out for a little bit. How long this will be? Probably guessing about an hour and a half, maybe, maybe maximum 2 hours, as most of my sessions tend to go. Obviously, I will try to sketch at the end of the session as I had done last time. I might even pick up on what we had kind of covered as we had before, and maybe even incorporate it with a little bit of the stuff we're doing even today with the actual breaking of cards, trading cards. So again, as a reminder for those of you that are watching or joining for the first time, this is kind of a hobby channel, things that I have an interest towards. Most of the time, it's going to go into things like these kind of trading cards, which can diversify in terms of topics. It can be things like Marvel cards, and a lot of times right now and recently, it's been mostly sports cards. So NBA has been a big focus on things. I've done not cabbage, garbage pail kids. I do have other things that I would like to be able to get onto this live channel, but also like other kinds of hobbies I would like to do in the future. I know I've mentioned several times of things like possibly kit bashing, possibly photography talk a little bit here and there, but we'll see where it goes. With also tying things in towards obviously the sketching and the drawing. So, as we hang out today, you guys are welcome to converse, ask questions, and hang out and draw with me. In terms of what we'll be sketching and drawing, I'm not sure exactly just yet. I would like to be able to even incorporate the idea of using some of the visuals of inspiration coming from stuff like this in tune towards studies in my sketchbook. Um, let's see here. We're gonna open it up real quickly. I'm gonna start with the cards. This particular box and pack is, a little bit more of a hobby pack, so it does have specific things that are slightly guaranteed, which makes it a bit of an expensive pack. But for me, I personally like to do this kind of stuff because of the fact that I have the interest in the hobby, and I don't necessarily do a lot of resale and that kind of stuff. I will send things in for grading, which I haven't really done a lot of, but I'm curious to see. I've sent some cards in recently, and I probably won't get them back for a little bit, but we'll see how it comes out. This particular pack, like I said, did run me a little bit, as most other things in my hobbies do. This is also why we work hard and to be able to generate the income to be able to support the things I have interest towards. Um, anyways, Sirius was asking about being able to how to draw, things like products and props and vehicles and cars. You don't know where to start. How would I approach learning to draw those things? And it's not about even drawing those things specifically. Looking for the archetype is really the important thing. Okay, whether it's in shoes or vehicles or cameras or people or animals, looking for the archetype of something that you find interesting, and it could be those specific models, to break down to the most simplistic, basic form of them. And we would draw them from the most basic of views: side view, front view, top views, maybe even three-quarter views. Not even worry about perspective per se. And of course, taking a class would help you on being able to build those things, right? Um, like I said, though, you might think that the car and drawing not cars, cars and shoes are completely separate. But for me, there are relationships there. Maybe not so much in subject matter, maybe not so much in materials and function, but in terms of the method of thinking of what I'm trying to do, they are relatable. You have to find that. And again, welcome everybody. Yep, we had Thanksgiving here in the U.S. It was relaxing. I had about a week off. I can't not cancel, but I pushed my classes online to the next week, which is this week right now. I had class today this morning, so I drove back from San Diego this morning around 8 a.m. I got up around like 6 or 7. So I've been up since then. Drove up, had a class for about 3.5, 4 hours. And so after that, I relaxed at home, and I'm here today now, hanging out, and I'm to relax. This is my way of relaxing. I could still be working, and yes, I could still be drawing for some kind of work, but I will be sketching for myself. So if you can't give yourself those moments of time to be able to just relax and hang out for a little bit for your own interests and needs, you will suffer. So you got to give yourself those allowances as often as you can. Now, of course, you don't want to just indulge and spend hours upon hours in the full taste in those areas, especially on things like you have interest in games or watching movies. All those are good, but imbalance is not what you want. So I'm going to go through some of these packs. As I said, what I'm going to try to do today is, as a sketch later on, I'm going to be looking for some specific things. Of course, in the cards, I have specific stuff I'm looking for. But at the same time, it's not about the collectability or the value in these cards, which I am looking for, but also within the visual information of things like pose that I want to be able to incorporate here. And the reason why is because the last time I streamed, we did something like this. We studied the idea of form, proposing, this evolution of sketching and drawing. And what I want to show maybe this time is how I can use some sort of visual guide as I can break things down and to maybe be inspired by pushing it potentially. So these will be interconnected together. I don't always necessarily just do this kind of stuff separately, which most of the times it seems that way, but I can infuse the interests of things together. So we're just going to open some packs, and I guess, as I said, you guys are welcome to ask questions and hang out and draw and sketch with me. And they can be relatable to the things that we have here, and they can also be relatable to things of other interests that you might have. In these particular packs, it's, again, like I said, this is not a cheap box, but we'll have potentially 3 autographs or memorabilia cards. This is a pack of 12 with 5 cards on the inside. This is from Panini. This is Select from this season 21-22, last season that is. So of course we'll be looking at rookie cards, and we'll be looking for autographs, and we'll be looking for any numbered cards specifically. Numbered rookies would be great. The lower the number, the better. Now usually there are inserts and special cards, things like silvers and prisms and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to kind of separate these out. I get them. Certain players I'll know, other players I won't. The ones I recognize I definitely will put aside, and I'll usually pull them from the top. Things like rookie cards I'll put off to the side. Guys like Kaminga. Then I'll pull from the back, which is another rookie. Then we'll pull the special Rondo. And this is a silver base, which is probably not going to be numbered, and it is not. So some of these I'll sleeve up in between. Others I won't. I know that the camera is hiding some of the areas over there. Yeah, how's it going, Halo Gear? Yeah, just hanging out at home now. I got back earlier today after the class I finished up on. So here we get tricolor, and we have a blue. This is a 75th anniversary year. Cat Devilish is asking about my pets a bit. Any interesting stories of pets that I own? Well, first, how many pets do I even have? I have a lot of animals in this place. I myself have my cat, which is actually sitting right below the table. Actually, let me bring her up. No, she left. She walked off. She was here, literally sitting underneath it, but she walked off. An old cat. She's about 12 years old now. Piper is her name, and I got her when she was bred by breeders, and I picked her up because she's a special breed. And I got that special type of breed mainly because living as a single, I wanted a cat that was very kind of like independent on its own, and it's a Scottish fold is what I got. Her name is Piper, but she's around somewhere. So I have a cat, and I also have a snake, which is a Brazilian rainbow boa, and that's in my room inside of a large glass tank, which I'll have to check out his tank later on just to make sure everything is clean and also humidified. He's probably about 5 years old now. He's a decent size, nothing too big, but as snakes do, they'll live a good long while. His name is Rocco. And then I have also a scorpion, which is a flat rock scorpion from Tanzania, and that one is a couple of years old. His name is Gilgamesh. It's a male, I can tell. I also have a female tarantula. That one is a Chilean rosehair. I had a Tuscan blonde, but unfortunately, due to an accident, passed away. And that's about it. So, yeah. But story-wise, I'll come back up to it. Let me open up and bring these cards around the space. I'm going to put it off to the side. We'll just open the. So here we have a 75th or 70 years of NBA. This is a John Morant card. I opened up one of these earlier. I'll still put it aside, non-numbered. Tricolor, non-numbered, but those I put aside as well too. Ethan was asking, any advice on planning full-time studies? Student with part-time work. A difficult position to be in, as I can easily say. Not that I have full experience in, so no matter what I say wouldn't necessarily actually give you the answer to anything. But I can definitely give you my observations of what I've seen from other students. So we have something right there. That's a backwards card. So that would be an autograph. And we'll see what that is in a minute. But going back to the stories of pets that I have, I guess it would actually pertain to my cat and my spiders. And the cats are running around right now. I actually had that Tuscan blonde, which passed away this year. And then I have my Chilean rose hair. Her name is Petunia. Petunia is a tarantula that I've had for over 10 years, and I don't handle her anymore. Um, the tarantula itself was actually very handleable when I first got her. Uh, and I took her to classes and stuff like that because we draw, in classes and we see the insect and the bugs. I'll bring in the class, so I would bring her in also and show off the tarantula to people. I was away from home one day. I think I was out. Where was I? Probably just work. And then I came home from work, 9 to 5. I worked at a video game company at the time. I worked at a game company called Tryon in San Diego. Came home from work and I went into my room and there was that glass tank, which is where the tarantula is being held, propped open. So my cat, Piper, had actually then pulled the cover off the top of the tarantula. And she was gone, the tarantula. And so I looked all around the room looking for this tarantula and I could not find her. And so I thought, shoot, maybe my cat killed her because apparently cats like to eat spiders, if you didn't know. Tarantulas, I don't know, but little spiders, they'll eat those. But I assumed that she had killed it and maybe took it somewhere or something. I couldn't find the carcass. I couldn't find any piece of it. So I was like, all right, whatever. So I moved on. So I bought another tarantula, which happens to be the blondie, that replaced Petunia. 3 months goes by. 3 months. And I walk into my room one day after work again, and there was that same tarantula crawling across my floor in my room. And in there, it was in the room for 3 months walking around. And I never saw her. And I happened to come across her that one day, months afterwards. And she was very thin, very emaciated. Tarantulas can actually live only on water for up to a year. I only feed them once a month, if that. They can go without food for months if they don't want to. So they're very long-lived animals, but they have a very slow metabolism. So she probably was very stationary for one place for a long time, conserving her energy. But by the time I found her, she was very, very thin. And at that point, she was extremely aggressive. So when I approached her, she raised up her arms, fangs out, backing up a little bit. I was able to actually scoop around like a board and I put her back in the cage, and I was able to get her water in there. And I thought she was going to pass. A couple of weeks later, I started to feed her. She ate, thankfully, but she was going through a molt. So tarantulas will molt their exoskeleton to grow and increase, and she got stuck in there. So her energy was low. She wasn't eating very well, and she was obviously dehydrated. And she was molting. They flipped upside down, and she got stuck in there. So there she stood. I thought she was gonna again die from that. I had to literally physically pull her out of her shell, and then she laid there and I thought she would pass, and I gave it a day. And the next morning, I got up, and she apparently survived it. She's still alive right now, and that happened 6, 7 years ago. So she still is now around. Outlived the blondie, and I don't touch her to this day. After 6, 7 years, she's still aggressive. Whatever happened as she was walking around in my room made her very aggressive. I guess I don't know. Spike Deagle Diesel. We didn't draw anything yet. Daryl Grant's asking, what brush tip pens would you recommend if I wanted to try a piece with outlines like the drawings you have under the cards? Here, what you're going to want to try these kind of brush pens here. These are the Pentel brush pens, but in actuality, this drawing right here was not done with this brush pen at all. You assume that was a brush pen like this, but in actuality, it was just done with this kind of brush pens, felt tip brush pens made by like Tombow or Zebra or Kuretake or whatever brand, and they're the Furenosuke style brush pens. They're relatively thin. They come in a little bit thicker, but this image, this sketch was done with those kind of brush pens, felt tip. Appreciate that, Kyle. Thank you for your support. I'll come back to that question, Ethan, in just a moment. It's a heavy question. So let me just put away these base. Another rookie. I'm going to open up the one on the bottom first. It's another Corey Kispert. This one I pulled from another pack a while back ago, and I have it sleeved up over here. I kind of want to send it in grading, which is this guy, Corey Kispert. But this card right here, the gold disco, is a rookie card, but it's only out of 10, so it's numbered 4 of 10. So I might send this one in. Yeah, felt tip brush pens. So here is Trae Young, unstoppable card. Nice little design. Kind of a tie-dye. Non-numbered, but I'll put that on the 75 here. And we have the auto, which is a vertical. I don't know exactly what this will be. Pistons. Isaiah Livers out of 249. It's an autograph card. It's a rookie, and it's numbered out of 249, but still, as a rookie card, a nice pull. And I'm just going to just see that one up right now. So going into Ethan's questions about balancing full-time studies as a student with part-time work, how do you balance something like that? Well, I mean, of course, you can accept the fact that that's not going to be an easy lifestyle, right? Trying to become a full-time student while you're working part-time. Now, depending on what your situation is, it could be full-time studies as a student in a university, or it could be full-time studies on your own time of taking online classes. Whatever the situation, again, it's going to be super tough. I'd be very careful because you have to prioritize one or the other eventually. The part-time job may not be your priority, but you still kind of have to do it. This one feels a bit thick. I'm going to put it aside for the moment. Sometimes you can feel the thicknesses of them. So again, maybe you know instead of trying to balance the two, maybe you work primarily at first for like a summer, build enough funds, and use that time off to focus on just studies alone. And maybe that's only one time out of the year a session where you get to fully focus primarily on education, where the other times you can then maybe try to balance the two together. But I would give yourself an opportunity in a year, at least once or twice at a session or a term, to be able to give yourself an allowance to fully invest in just the education. Because part-time working and full-time classes, I mean, is there a way to balance it? I just don't think so, because you have to give it the priority. What I'm saying is though is that as you let's say you give your priority towards the education stuff, right, and you still have your part-time classes, or part-time work, that is. You still have to do that job. You may not necessarily give it the full investment, but you're still giving the hours to it, and it's going to chew into the thing that you want to actually do. And even though you might prioritize your education, you can't negate the work that you're trying to do there. So either way, they're infused together. Now you could say that I'll try to be like work part time in my hours and find the other hours in the day to be able to actually work on my homework and that kind of stuff. And you could do this, but as I said, it's not just about the hours; it's also about the investment of energy. So the job that you might have could be potentially very depleting in terms of your mental and physical energy. So as much as you would like to be able to push on your homework as a full-time student, and even if you give it the priority to things, we can only sustain so long, mentally and physically, right? So I would say that's going to be a situation where you're going to kind of limp through it, where it's going to be a struggle, and you're going to kind of like push through the hardness of that challenge, and you'll get through it, and you'll pick up on some things educationally, but you might not necessarily take advantage of that situation educationally, right? So you take a class, you have a part-time job, but you'll push as much as you can, and I don't know how many number of classes you'll take, 3 or 4. You only absorb so much, because you're like I said, trying to incorporate all those things. So as I said earlier, sometimes it'd be good to like maybe take a time off of education. Maybe you spend I don't know, a summer just working only, or vice versa, springtime, summertime, or fall time. You'll work your part-time job, spend the hours on there primarily. Maybe you'll sketch a little bit here and there on your own, but you'll work, build the funds, and then spend that spring or the summer primarily on just education, right? So you step away from that work. Obviously, you want to stay in good terms so that not negotiation, but more the conversation about, hey, I'm going to step away for the summer, and maybe the company will work with you on being able to allow you with the time off to educate yourself on things you want to do. Now, if it's part-time jobs at like some kind of like I don't know, simply as like maybe an office job, or maybe it's a kind of a menial job here and there. Maybe they don't do that kind of stuff, but at the same time, you can then apply for another kind of work that's similar to it, right? But if it is a company you've been working for years, you can create that dialogue. I'm saying, I want to take a summer off, and I'll work with you guys this fall, winter, and then maybe you can give me the summer of a couple months so I can go, take these classes. Again, maybe you can do that. I've had people do it before. They'll take a sabbatical or something like that, right? Time off on things. Maybe some of the companies will even support them, saying, here's a bit of like actual money to take these classes if it's going to help in what they also do. I don't know. If you already kind of work in the industry, which you may not, but for people that do, how they would educate themselves, they would work their jobs, and it would build then this dialogue, as I talked about, on being able to have the company support them on the corporate level to support on the educational payments of things, especially if they're going to stay in that job and also increase their skill sets. So that kind of stuff does happen. But as a student, As I said, your part-time job is probably not going to do that. Which is why I'm saying, you're probably going to have to either exit out from that and then find new ways of getting new work into the future. But it's a difficult situation. There's no easy in and out of this. And I don't think there's necessarily a harmony and a balance to that in a way in which I can explain in such a structure that it applies to a general grouping. Because it's so situational of an individual, what you're going through. Again, where you're located, what your job is, how many hours you get, how much you even get paid, because is it worth it to stay, or do you just take more hours? How many classes you take, what kind of education you're going for, how many hours you have in a day after work to be able to do that kind of stuff. So there's so many variables. There's just no way for me to actually tell you anything really to say that this is going to go from check, 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 and you get that and balances to good. At this point, it's about being able to say, how do I just take that year and adjust my focuses and priorities so I can really invest to give myself the safety net of financial means to then be able to focus on the really important aspects of what I really want to do, right? That's the kind of the way I would probably mentally approach it. But within those nuances, that would be up to you to find out. I would say if you look for other people that are students that are in similar situations, that might help out because they can get an idea as to like what did they do. That's what I'm saying earlier, that I can't necessarily really give you that really hands-on approach because when I was a full-time student, I didn't work. I wasn't working part-time or full-time. I was a full-time student primarily. I took out loans. I had help from family just to financially support the things I'm doing educationally. But again, it was a risk and it was tough still. And I couldn't imagine seeing myself working even part-time while I was doing that. But I had friends that did, and what they would do is they would take a term off and then we'll go work and they'll come back. For them, it would take longer to finish, but that was the only way, right? I hope that makes sense, Ethan. And I don't know if that it relates in any way to what you're doing, but that's all I can really say about that. Okay, so here we have a patch card on this one. Seth Curry, base. Mr. Workday, Jaden Springer. Red Prism, Colin Sexton. Saw him earlier. This is probably not numbered. Oh, it is. 14 out of 199. So we'll put this aside as well. And this is a numbered card also, a patch. Don't know if it's autographed. Oh, it's a LeBron rookie. And it's a patch. So there's no autograph on this one. Surface looks okay. A little bit of scratching here and there. But this is actually game worn, part of their actual jersey. So encloses game worn used material, which is what they've inserted here. And this is a number card out of 99. 32 out of 99. So this is actually a nice one right here. So we'll put that aside for now. As a LeBron hollow silver, that's great. That's a pretty decent pull. I know that stuff that we just talked about it sounded very general, but that's kind of have to explain it because I don't know your current situations of things. But yeah, do the best you can, man. Good luck to you. Kat is asking, have I tried to draw on black paper or only chalkboard? So, interesting thing that you asked in there, in terms of the combination of the question, is that yes, I have drawn on black paper and on chalkboard, but I started on the black paper first as a student to practice to draw on the chalkboard. So back when Norm, my mentor, was teaching the course of dynamic sketching, he wanted me to help TA the class, be a teacher's aide. So I would help him out drawing on the board and stuff like that, but I couldn't get a feel of it because drawing on the blackboard was so tough. One, the material, but also working on a black surfacing. So to practice on it, I got myself a black sketchbook. It was literally a Canson scrapbook. So there's brown tone paper, white paper, and black paper. So I got that, and I used white Prismacolor. And I would draw with that in that sketchbook to practice. That particular book I actually gave to Norm. It was a square book that I had, and then somebody stole it over the years. Like somebody at some point in the past took it, and it disappeared. I still have those images. I scanned them, thankfully. But the original book itself is gone. But it was all student work, so easily got some tricolor in here. Don't know if it's numbered. Nope. Adebayo. Put that next to this guy here, and Paul George. Second row. Let's bring out the box, and we only have this many packs left over. There are some filler cards in here that are blocks to make them feel thicker, and they're nothing actually. Decker, yeah, that's this card right here. I just pulled this one out of the same kind of box. This is the Magic Johnson autograph. This is numbered also out of 199. The card I recently sent in was a Jalen Green rookie card. That was numbered out of 20. Was autographed. Kuzma, nice. Base, got Jalen Suggs rookie. Chris Paul. So right here is Jalen Green, the rookie card. I already pulled one of these already, but this is a nice one to have. So put that one there. See that later on. Non-numbered Jalen Johnson. Nice one as well too. Wyvern is asking, how do you get better at teaching coaching? Is it something you'll get through experience, or do you have methods you approach? Now, I'm assuming you're talking about the ability to guide and instruct others through techniques or advice within a personal experiences and whatnot. Maybe not necessarily teaching a technique per like steps in order, but more about being able to assist, right? Because teaching comes in two formats in that way, which is to be able to show people how to do something, A, B, and C, repeat that process over again. I'll show you, feedback based on how you can improve these technical things. That's one way of teaching, and most instructors approach it that way. They know their skill sets, they know their techniques, and they're able to pass that information down. Others can guide through a conversation about experiences, through their own observations or their own thoughts and opinions, and they're giving them an idea, right, towards how they can approach something. Now, of course, it doesn't necessarily give them an answer, but it gives them the idea of confidence, an idea to be able to approach it themselves, to have self-discovery. And that form of education is self-education, yet with a guiding hand a little bit to push, if anything else, right? Not to show them how to do it, but to say, go that direction right there and go find out, right? So in education, you can't necessarily give them all the answers. Even in technique, in the two formats, you can't just tell them everything. There has to be that sense of self-discovery. And in the beginning of being an instructor, I was always so concerned that people were lost, and I wanted to give them everything. Like, oh, this is how you do this, and I'll show you how to do that. So I was giving them everything most times. And it doesn't really help them in most cases, because what then also does is it creates a sense of imitation. They just repeat and regurgitate the same thing gets done. And that's fine in the beginning as a way of education because it gets the ball rolling, but in no way does it give them self-confidence to say, well, I'll go try this now the way I think it could be done, right? And even if it's wrong, or even if it's right, because then there is no right and wrong. There's only the experience at that point. So in terms of advice on what I can tell you about how to teach and coach is that you have to let them find out on their own. Give them just enough information to be able to kind of figure things out, right? And you shouldn't take things personal or take things and make yourself feel bad because you feel like you didn't do your job. Sometimes they won't get it. Sometimes they won't actually understand it. And you can't necessarily save everybody. It's not about even really saving. It's more about making sure that everybody succeeds at the level you assume should be. It doesn't, again, that line doesn't exist. Everybody has their own differing levels of success and failure. And again, they have to figure that out. But you can't feel bad about it because some will fail and some will do good. And it's not a judgment on your abilities and skill sets because if you did it properly, which is to assist and guide, hopefully they'll get to that point to their level of skill. And they'll move on, And in education, you can't necessarily get fully connected either, And I think it can happen in rare situations. Like me and my mentor, Norm, we connected, at a friendship to a family level. And he's had many relationships with other individuals at the time he was an instructor. But after my generation, he kind of cut that off. There was a point in which I think he reached an age where he couldn't connect to these younger people the same way. And so he didn't really build that kind of dialogue and conversation with the younger crowd of students after my generation of people. And so it was very much just one-sided. I'm the instructor, you're the student, and there's no conversation about, just daily life conversation stuff, It didn't exist afterwards. So even for me, when I first started teaching, because I was so young, I was like 28 when I started teaching. And a lot of the students at Art Center were like 23. So it's only like a 5-year difference. So in a lot of ways, I was very close to their mental thinking. And, I built friendships out of students. And of course, that can be controversial today, but that was the case. Some of them I would hang out, we get drinks, and we talk about what we're doing and help them on their projects and whatnot. And is that appropriate? Again, it was more like at the time I didn't consider it because of the age factor. We were just so close in thinking process that it just there was a relatable element there, from groups of students that would come through. But as I got older, after over 10 years of teaching, at a certain point, I was like, the students were getting younger. They're like 17, 18, and I had no connection to them. I could talk about stuff that I have interest in, and they would look at me like, I don't know what you're talking about. There was nothing to converse about. There was no actual relationship element there then, from student to teacher to the level of friends. So then I started to distance myself from that aspect, from teacher to student, and having no bond of that connection. And to the point where I started cutting people off at that point. Ones that were actually trying to make that connection, I denied them that. Because eventually, of course, it becomes a situation where you have to be mindful. It's like, well, it's not going to be very appropriate at this point. Um, so that's why today, it's like when I teach in person, it's very much more on a professional level of this is what I do, and this is what you should be doing. You go through those processes. I give you advice, and you go find out. But there's no longer, hey, let's get chummy and go get a drink and talk about things. It doesn't happen anymore. But anyways, in terms of coaching and teaching, they're very much like we just talked about earlier about balance of life. So many little nuances within those two, and how you build that connective tissue as an instructor to others, coachability kind of things too. You got to be able to read people as well, and that can be really difficult when you're younger. You don't see certain signs of things. You need to be careful because also as an instructor, you don't want to get taken advantage of, right? Because that could happen. Um, Based on your time, based on your interests, and also other kind of things. So you also have to kind of put up a little bit of a guard. You just don't want to just let people in. They'll just take things from you, and then walk away. So you have to be very, very careful too. But think about that a little bit. Yeah. So Daryl understands. So Tat Tank, the drawing on the desk in the background. This is a play mat that I have, and this is a sketch, or not a sketch, more of an illustration of a character that I had from a gallery series of an independent show that I did last year, of a character that I had from my storyline, The Blacksmith. If you go onto my Instagrams, you scroll back a little bit, you'll probably find them. Sorry, I didn't even go through these cards. We have Caruso over here. Let's open up the back one. Oh, DeRozan. Ace. Silver right there. This is a Kade Cunningham rookie. This is a nice card. Everyone's on this guy a lot. A little bit off center, bit left heavy, non-numbered. But this one in the Jalen Green, this is a silver. Nice pull. So let's see what this card is. And I'm assuming this is a patch. It's Josh Giddey. And this is also a rookie. We got 2 patches and 1 autograph. So that means this fills the quota of the 3 things I'm going to get. I wish I got 1 more autograph, but this LeBron being numbered is really great. I don't think this is numbered though. This is not. But as a rookie, silver and a patch, people like this guy a lot. I'll put this side over here. That means this one has just a white blank. Any advice on learning, understanding how to grayscale in art? I'm assuming you're talking about value structure. When it comes to the value structure of things, of course, having an hands-on approach to show you the guidelines about first producing, right, the charts to hone in on your value skills, and to be able to actually then study things in still life or observation and reference, using whether dry mediums or paint and whatnot to be able to study and observation. But in classes, we started off by doing actual value charts. So we do color charts and value charts. We would do a lot of this kind of stuff in painting at first. And in drawing, we rarely kind of did it, but you can do it with pencil. Value charts are going from 100 to a 0, right? And you have the 10% increments of value change that goes into it. You can have a value chart you actually look at, and then you would try to match it up to it, because you're trying to hone your eyes for accuracy of matching the values of what you have in a chart that is printed to what you can then also generate. So as you then say, what's a 50% value? What's a 70% value? And are you able to match that even by mine, right? So if I have a structure of a painting or a drawing, and I'm trying to create a high contrast, kind of painting, or a low contrast kind of painting, a high value, low value, from a reference photograph or my own generation, I'm able to control the value settings I'm going to go for. Now, photography study can be really helpful. Taking your own photographs and studying light in the world around you, taking black and white shots will be really good. If any reference photographs you're taking from, studying from pencil or pen, turn into a black and white image, right? And that ways it can help you a little bit in being able to just see more of value structures. When we painted on site on like landscape studies, it was an instructor that I had named Mike Hernandez, and we would do a lot of gouache paintings of landscapes. In the study, we would do things first in black and white, not full value, just literally white and black, just shape language. And we would just break down shapes based on what we see in landscape. And we first have to squint. We would squint our eyes to kind of see the separation of values of dark and light, and then we would have to interpret them. Very difficult stuff. Just because we say it's simplicity of value, two system value, it doesn't mean it's easy to do. From there, we add then a third value, and then we add a full value range. But from the grayscale and value studies, we go to monochrome painting, one color. From monochrome painting, we can go to limited palettes, and then we go to full palettes from there, right? Here's a base, Williams third, Dort, Kevin Love, and this is that filler card, so this is nothing. Rookie Damon Manton, this is a silver, non-numbered. Put this here. Siakam Select. It's got that printing line on it though, which is kind of eh. It's a court side though. It's a nice design of the card itself. Let me actually zoom in a little bit more too, actually. But yeah, Kat, value structure is one of the hardest things to learn because in painting or drawing, especially painting, the value structure is everything. Color is really subjective. It's based on what you want to say through it, convey through, story or feeling and emotion. But value structure really helps the volume structuring of the painting itself. Trent, Nikola Jokic, 75 years. Put this down here. Keon Johnson. So this guy's on the Blazers right now, so I wanted one of his rookies, and this is in a scope prism, not numbered, but it's a rookie card, and he's on. I've been watching him for a little bit since I watched the Blazers. Yeah, again, hopefully everybody had a nice break in Thanksgiving. The holidays of Christmas are right around the corner, so it doesn't end. And we got a die cut bronze or gold. I don't know. Let's see. Anthony Davis base. Ooh, a Zion base. Some of these base cards I like to also save. Here's a Russell Westbrook. Evan Mobley rookie card, numbered out of 65 die cut. Here's a nice one. 30 out of 65. And Mobley is a great player. Centered pretty nice. Surface is clean. That one I'll sleeve. Blake Griffin. This guy was awesome when he was a couple years ago. Why you're saying that you were just curious because some of the juniors wanted you to teach them how to draw after he requested to go through your sketchbook out of nowhere. Certainly caught you off guard. Here's the thing, Wyvern. To add to your conversation or your question and comment, I would recommend you to get involved in being able to show people. Don't even think of it as teaching. Think of it again as what I mentioned earlier, as a dialogue, conversation about sharing ideas and thoughts. It's a good thing to practice on because it really enables you to practice your verbalization skills. So it's one thing to be able to actually draw this stuff out, right? Technique wise and method wise, but it's another to be able to explain it verbally to somebody, right? If I can show you something, great, but if I can also verbally communicate it to you, there's a two-part front of action there, visual to verbal. The verbal communication and the visual communication put together makes it even stronger of understanding for someone to understand what to do. And if you practice that, it also makes you more aware of what you're doing. If I draw something, what am I actually doing? How do I actually explain it? What's actually been happening? If I can find a way to verbalize it, it makes you more clear about what you're trying to go for. So at any age, no matter what level of experience, it's not really teaching, it's about verbalizing, communicating. Get into it as much as you can. So at first it starts up with friends, right? We share ideas, we share each other's homework, we give each other critique. It can become something more age different. Maybe someone younger than you, right? Family based, student based, whatever the case is, that wants to learn something. Show them something, right? And then from there, who knows where it will go. But regardless of that, regardless if it's something that you do professionally, that skill set in the industry will become highly valuable. As I'm sure you can understand about how I converse with you guys, the skill set for me to be able to actually explain things and talk about stuff becomes extremely commodity for me in terms of the industry because not a lot of artists can do it. That's Trae Young card there. Mitchell, this guy's going off. Another Keon. So this is a base. And here's that prism. Actually, I wanted to separate this. We'll put this here. Another fill card. Jimmy Butler, silver. Premier level. It's a pretty good one. And reddish. Another courtside. Last pack. Vico Hart is saying, or asking, do I have any advice on self-discipline as a self-taught artist and finding balance between what you need to do as in the fundamentals and what you want to do creatively? So I'm assuming the question really is then going into the advice about self-discipline as a self-taught artist, so that you can find the balance between fundamentals and creativity. Okay. Here's a blue prism. Let me finish this up first and I'll get back to that question. Butler, Jackson, rookie. Christopher, rookie. And we got, oh, nice. Another Kade Cunningham. Still a little bit off center and numbered. Number 299. Number 9 of 299. So we have two Kade Cunninghams. Both the same card. This one's the base. This one's the prism blue. Nice. Actually, this box was a pretty solid box for opening. What we actually got out of it were some of the patch cards. So this is LeBron James patch, game worn jersey stuff, numbered as well too. The Josh Giddey. This is a rookie card, silver, not numbered. I got one autograph, a rookie player. Don't really follow this guy. Numbered though. And I got another nice one here, dive cut, Evan Mobley, rookie, that is also numbered, low number, to a degree. So this box was actually pretty solid. A lot of the stuff being graded would be really nice. Piper is not back, that's a different cat. So I have 3 cats in the house, actually. Let me sleeve some of the stuff up real fast, and then we'll go to a sketchbook. Just give me 1 second. And you guys can keep asking questions. Going back to the question though, which is about self-discipline as a self-taught artist and finding balance between what you need to do as fundamentals and what you want to do creatively. You don't want to necessarily separate them as an isolation, meaning people isolate the fundamentals first and think that I'm going to be good enough at some point fundamentally where I can now move on to the creative side of things. And that doesn't happen. And the reason why is because you never feel ready to actually go into the side of creativity because you're never satisfied with your fundamental skill set. It just won't happen, right? You always think that I can improve this, proportion, anatomy, line, whatever that thing is, pose, right? Perspective, any base fundamental, you're going to always feel like you can improve on things. So that's why you're never going to feel ready to this idea that I can now all of a sudden just go into the world of just creatively drawing, right? It's the wrong way of thinking, in my opinion. Now, the reason why is because when you move into the side of creativity, what is really happening, right? Well, you're basically playing. You're playing with visuals, you're playing with ideas, you're playing with concepts of things that you enjoy, right? Interests of worlds or story or cultures or styles or methods of things. And it enables you to play with those areas and regions to, create your own stuff, right? You generate your own things. But to play, you got to be able to obviously be involved in doing it. You can't just sit back thinking that fundamentally is what's going to get me past it. It's not actually. If anything else, it'll stifle creativity because you're so much following of the rules are happening that you're unable to openly, freely express the way you want to. So when we play as kids, what do? There are no rules. We just do what we find fun, right? But as we get older, we get very serious and we have to find a career and we have to worry about a job and we have so many anxieties and risks of things that all of a sudden all that pressure builds up and then you can't feel like you can move. The play, then as we think of it as being a kid, is now taken out the window because we think that's not responsible nor a proper way of approaching life. But in our field of creativity, if you lose that ability to explore and play, then you completely hit that wall and you can't overcome it because you assume by taking the fundamentals it'll help you overcome those things, but it actually doesn't in most cases. Now I'm not saying this is 100% guaranteed either, right? But what I am saying is that based on my experience, when I create and draw, it's the same feeling. And I talked about this earlier in my class today. It's the exact same feeling that I had when I was 10 years old. When I played with my toys, which I have remembrance of, I'm 41 now, but as a kid at 10 years old, I remember being outside, playing with toys and imagining these things as being this grand world and characters and a whole storyline. Now, I use that mentality of generating ideas from visual things that I have in front of me to decide a drawing, right? But as we get older, we lose that ability because we treat it so technically, seriously, so much pressure behind it. So the fundamental is not the answer. They are tools. They're tools to visually hit the standards of what we have in our industry and also within the practices of our artistic techniques. But that's what they all are, just tool sets. The level of range of how good you are in those tool sets is based on how much time you put into it. You can put a lot of time into it. You'll still need to increase those skill sets no matter what for a lifetime. But that doesn't enable you to play, right? Some people can argue this and say, well, I disagree. I think having the fundamentals will allow you to play more. It could very much be true. I'm not saying this is the answer. This is not 100%. I am saying in my experience, though, that the fundamental techniques were not really the key answer. It's about being able to let go, this is to have fun, to allow myself to do so, not to feel guilty because, oh, I want to read comics right now. I want to open cards right now. Oh, I want to do this right now. Because those visual information of things are the stimulus to help me create as well, too, right? So I would say that's the best form of approach on being able to balance the fundamentals and creativity and the fact that you don't isolate. They are actually brought together because as you are practicing fundamentals, you should allow yourself to also creatively draw. Don't feel like you have to be all of a sudden ready to do so. You just start now, right? And nothing should hold you back from that. And the only person that's going to hold you back from it is you. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I think. Sharon, hey, how's it going? Working on the homework right now. Very nice. Excuse me as I sleeve some of these cards right now. We'll get to some of the other questions over here in soon. How much basketball am I watching? Quite a bit actually, because I actually have a league, the annual subscription on NBA. So I watch it on my mobile, and I stream it all the time. I follow the Blazers primarily, but I'll still watch a lot of other teams as well too. Like today, I was watching the Grizzlies, and Morant is just insane. But I find sports to be very entertaining. I used to watch a lot of basketball in the 90s, when I was a kid. I grew up, what is it, in Oregon. This is back in 94, 95, 96. This is when Jordan was going off. So I grew up with Jordan at the time. And even though I was in Portland, in Oregon, I followed the Bulls when I was in the 90s. Now, once I got to about the mid 2000s and whatnot, I kind of fell out of it. And my brothers got super into the NBA, and they were following Kobe. So I never really had that Kobe attachment. For me, it was mostly Jordan. And then I kind of fell off of it because I was doing other stuff. And then from there, I got back into it in the recent, like, last 5 years, which is pretty recent. But do I play? I mean, I like to shoot, but with any sport, I actually like to play sports a lot. When I was a kid, I used to be very physically active, which I try to be today too. I love baseball. I loved baseball a lot, playing it and also collecting cards. And I also love basketball and playing it. I used to love soccer and playing it. I find most, if not all, sports to be entertaining. Even if I don't follow it, I can sit and watch it. I was in New Zealand back in like 2011, and I was hanging out with a friend in Christchurch. And he's like, "Oh, we're gonna go to a bar and watch a rugby." I never watched a rugby game, but I was invested. I was watching the All Blacks, and they were great. And rugby is super insanely tough and also awesome to watch. Last couple of years, I was watching F1. The whole the races and whatnot, and I still love watching those as well too. So I love all forms of athleticism and skills that go into that physical parts of things. Um, I don't know. There's just so much there I can really gain because I've also did a lot of sports when I was young. You know, Ethan, you live in Christchurch. Nice. Yeah, I was there in 2011. Around that time, it had only been a couple years after the earthquake in like '08. So when I would visit some of the areas in the cities, there was a lot of stuff still like broken and kind of closed off. It was pretty amazing. But that's where I got this necklace. This one here. A friend, obviously got it for me, and I was visiting Christchurch, and I drove down to Akaroa, and I was visiting the area in the peninsula, and beautiful area, Akaroa. Yeah, but rugby never really picked up in the states as much as some of the other countries, of course. And yeah, rugby is still actually it is big in the U.S. It just doesn't have the same kind of following, much like soccer, or football, as most of the world will call it. So I may have missed a couple of things of questions beforehand, but I'm looking through right now. Cat's asking, do I ride horses and stuff? I wish. I actually wish I could do more. I've ridden a horse before, ridden horses before, but I would like to do more. I have a friend out in Texas who's a good close friend of mine who owns a ranch, and he actually makes saddles. He's a leather worker, so he's got a bunch of his own horses, and he invites me all the time to come out, saying, "Come stay at the ranch, and you can help me and help ride and stuff like that." It's like, oh, I really want to. So I plan to do so at some point soon. Ethan, you're saying they're so broken, like the aquarium. I heard the aquarium was a mess. That's amazing though. Yeah, I went back to New Zealand in 2017 or something like that. I visited Australia. I went to do a workshop in Adelaide, and I went to New Zealand afterwards. But that time I went to Auckland, visiting friends to go see Weta and stuff like that. Um, yeah, New Zealand is one of my favorite places to visit. Just stunning place. Let me see if there's anything in here I wanted to save. Keon, I will. Sorry, there's a cat in the background. That's probably what you're hearing. Sorry. Let's see. Am I a fan of the Doom franchise? Yeah, I played the original Doom when I was a kid. Hey, come here. She just ran out. I used to play Doom when it first came out on old PCs and stuff like that. But I haven't played much recently. The recent Doom games, honestly, a lot of first-person shooters I can barely play because they're just so fast. Yeah, I've gotten older now. Stop, Connie, come here. This one is Yuki. We'll let her sit here for now. I don't know if she'll want to stay, but yeah, she goes. She cries, but then she doesn't want to stay. Jalen Johnson will take. This one will take. There are 3 cats in this house, and many other animals, snakes and bugs. Will I be doing a webcomic at a point in the future from Stanley? No, I don't do webcomics. I plan to do printed comics. So my Blacksmith comic I printed is my first graphic novel, and I plan to continue it into either next year or the year after. And that will be like second issues of Blacksmith and whatnot. The Dynamic Bible will come out next year still, the second issue. And I have another book planned, which is the kind of the fantasy natural history book. That's also being planned. So I've actually many books being planned for next year. All the comments here, just reading real quickly. Jay Licker saying, how do you know when you've done enough for the day? It's hard to gauge the amount quality of practice I put in and don't want to gaslight yourself into thinking you did enough when I could have done more. Don't overthink it. You know, do as much as you feel like you satisfy yourself to, even though you can feel like you can do more. Have other interests. Find things that you also like to do otherwise. You can draw nonstop if you want to. I certainly wouldn't say that's a wrong thing, but I think balancing in multiple different interests is important. It can feel into also your sketching and drawing and practices of things. So even though you feel like you could, sometimes it's also better that you don't. But I'm also saying that it's situational. Some days you can, some days you won't, where you'll push or you'll do other stuff, right? But don't overthink it. Just kind of go by the flow of things and how you feel. If you feel a little bit tired, you kind of feel it in the guts, like, you know what, I kind of feel the stress of it, back off. But there are days in which challenge is important too. You don't want to just kind of back off every single time you feel strain. There are times you want to stress yourself as to find that bending point, to the point before you break. You actually want to find that sometimes. It's simple ideas like you basically build a fortitude and endurance to it. And at first you're bending that as much as you can before you break it, so you stack on more things. So as you bend it, you're not going to break as much, right? you can take on more weight. So think of it that way. But yeah, don't overthink that, please. It's not. Rondo, put that on top right there. And all the rookie cards I go through later on. See if there's anybody I want to grab on that one. When is my birthday? It happens to be May the 12th. May 12th. So I'm just gonna go through these real fast. Jalen Johnson, rookie tricolor. This one was not numbered. This is a rookie card of Delano. Put that aside, put that aside. That one, that one, that one. The ones I really kind of want to keep. Possibly even consider sending in the Jalen Green rookie cards. Kade. That one, most likely not. That one, probably yes. This one as well, yes. This one, maybe. And definitely this one as well. Numbered LeBron patch. This is a nice one. The lowest number card that we have right now is this one here, the Evan Mobley rookie, at 30 of 65 cards. So I think this would be considered a bronze, or I don't think it's a gold, but gold silver maybe. I don't know. Anyways, a nice, decent box opening for me on this one. Again, this box was not cheap; it was expensive. But if these grade well, they could be well worth what I paid for. Well worth. Now, of course, I don't sell all of them. You know, I don't open these packs to make a lot of money. Most of them I keep, I collect. So we'll see what happens with them. Actually, before I move on, what I wanted to do, I mentioned it earlier, was I want to do some of the cards and see if I can find a pose or a shot that I think could be nice to study from. Maybe even the Jalen Green as a base card. It's a nice pose from Trey, actually. Now the overlaps, that's interesting too. Nice and dynamic, but the silhouette being very open like that, I like the overlaps from Trey. A lot of the legs being cut off, I want the full body. So what we're doing at the moment is looking at two cards right now. We have one of Jalen Green, we have one of Trae Young. And I'm pulling these because I'm looking at the poses. Now this one is still being cut off at the bottom end, but I can fill in the gaps based on my own preemptive knowledge of human form. Trey is obviously in full body. Nice pose in terms of the camera angle. It's not an upshot per se. Has slight up angle, but the eye level is still relatively about here. It's just that he's kind of bending his body forward. Camera is slightly low, but again, it's not like I'm seeing extreme perspectives and whatnot. The overlapping is what I enjoy in this one. So let's grab a sheet in this section of the sketchbook. Now, recently, in the last couple of days, we did a live stream, which happens to be of this one study. And actually, what I'm going to do real quickly here is I'm going to move the webcam, make it smaller. Maybe I'll put it in upper right. So excuse the slight adjustment of the webcam. So that way it can open up and clear out the space here. Bring up, push out the teak. And so as I go up a little bit higher, you can kind of see the base form of this imagined walking, running character mech thing, which I did one iteration, base form. I did another iteration that incorporates the information of detail, still using primitive forms, and going into the iteration that goes straight into the sketch and drawing. I will probably most likely use a zebra. This is a felt tip brush pen. Found it normally in the art stores. Now this was done out of the imagination. Okay, so I imagined an idea of what the character was doing, pose-wise. He's just running or walking, whatever the case is. Detail-wise, design-wise, it was kind of done on the spot, based on my experiences of what I've done before. Okay, now what this is not always very kind of like consumable for most people, because you're still just trying to learn how to build forms, you know. So to just come up with the stuff on the spot is not the easiest to understand. But the problem is you assume that you should just be able to do this out of the gate. I take one class of figure drawing, I should be able to do this, right? It's like, that's not going to happen. So what we'll do here in this situation, and this particular live demo, is I'll take something from visual, reference and observation, and use that as a starting point to break down, similarly what we have over here, and then also be able to creatively enjoy to do something of a character, right? Maybe it is a sport character. Maybe I'll take the same people here and somewhat stylize it, right? I don't know just yet. I have no idea. I don't even know which one I want to go for. You guys can choose Trae Young or Jalen Green. Which one do you think? Harry saying sometimes your school would assign you to draw animate objects out of your preferred style. How do you go about drawing subjects you personally aren't into? You sometimes I kind of have to bite your tongue and go through it, you know. Trey, because in school you're going to be doing things that you don't like, but that experience is also a part of how the work happens, right? You know, in a job, you're not always going to be doing what you fully enjoy. So it's best that you go through it and being able to understand how to complete it. You have to find some way to make it enjoyable to you. There's something there. Even if you don't like to, animate subjects and styles that you don't prefer, there's something there that you can enjoy. Maybe it's the process, maybe it's the materials, maybe it's the function of what's going on. But there has to be something that you can actually latch onto. Without it, then everything is just a hassle. So don't narrow the focus on what you don't like about it. Go into things you can enjoy from it. And so that way you're still invested to some degree. It may not be something you want to carry through, but at least you can get it done. Because at the end of the day, with school projects or deadlines of work on an actual job, finishing it is the most important thing. But you have to go through that kind of stuff. You can't choose everything you want to do, and that's the fantasy of the industry. You assume that as you go to school, you graduate, you go to build this portfolio, and you think I'm going to work in the game industry or animation. I can design all these cool characters, but you're not going to be doing that. When you first get into the industry itself, you're just going to be doing the menial things. Hey, design this door. Design that box. Design this background. Design this shirt for a character in the background. You're going to be doing some really boring, basic stuff. But that's how you build your experience and climb that ladder, as most industries kind of are, right? So it's important for you to feel this, and I'm glad you are. Okay, so hopefully the light's not shining too much on it. And so we have a tray pose here. I'm going to zoom in so that we can actually see then a little bit closer to the paper. I'm going to have to just move a couple things here. Okay, we'll start in this area, maybe even behind this character. Did you want to come up, or what's going on? Okay, so let's start up here. No, stay here first. We'll see if you like it. Oh, she wants to. So let's study it. What I'm going to do first is start from shoulder line up here, and I'm going to work down to the hip area. All right, so I'm going to just build it using primitive forms and lines, primitive shapes, that is. So this way, going into the central line, down to the hip, and I'm going to actually just build the torso out a little bit, but he's going to twist. He's going to twist. So his hip on the bottom is going to come up. His shoulder will be here. His shoulder will be here. Now this first sketch can be rough and messy and incorrect. It doesn't matter. Even for me, there's probably going to be a lot of mistakes here. And that's okay. All right. I'm going to put a landmark here and here. And his leg is going to come up. So his knee, his right leg, is coming up this direction. It overlaps this position here. Comes down slightly. His other leg goes down, knee down over here. What I'm doing is placing in lines for landmarks. So his leg is going to come down this direction. Notice where his heel is. Draw a vertical line up. About here. His other leg. Toe comes up this direction. Going this way. His heel lines up with the toe. Right there. Let's use his one arm crossing over the chest. Hand position's right about there. We'll put a ball inside this as well too. And his hand is over here. We'll put the head in just a circle. It's a balloon. When did I start drawing left hand? I would do things in left hand for practice from the times when they would do the, the Inktober. In October they would do Inktober. And so instead of Inktober, I would do leftover. So I would draw my left hand. So this is a very basic stick figure as we've drawn it. Most of you should be able to draw stick figures like this relatively well. We can add a little bit more form to this though. Form is now three-dimensional, so cylinders, like the leg, maybe a ball for the knee, cylinder for the lower leg, and a block for the foot. That shows the underplane. Here's another cylinder for the left leg, round sphere for the knee, shape going into the lower leg, down to the foot. Let's go into the arms. We have cylinders. Cylinders. Hand is just a block. Let's go up into the head. Build up some form. Now, of course, taking classes on figure drawing and head sketching and that kind of stuff will give you the information about being able to approach this stuff. Trapezius goes behind. So from a stick figure, we kind of built out some shapes and forms. Okay. So Vico's asking, is this gesture starting out? Not necessarily. A gesture line could be seen as a couple of things. One, a gesture line could be seen as the action of physical line that creates movement, energy, right? It could also be the gestural line of the back or the movement of the pose. So a gesture of this pose could be something like that. That could be a gesture, right? It captures the movement of the character. But it's also because the lines are very movement-based. And so the line in combination to the pose are both probably, not probably, but elements of the gesture capturing, right? We didn't do that so much here, but that can be included here. I can go back and redo the thing again. So here's the upper torso, turns to the hips, underside right there. Leg comes forward in this direction, goes down that way. And again, I'm looking at the image in the picture again, trying to see if they want to make any corrections of stuff. I'm just repeating it real fast to show you another base version. Whether it's accurate or not doesn't really matter to me. Leg goes up that way, actually. Goes down this way. So from here, we can go down to that one. So we've done now two, okay? Kat, I'm primarily migrating over to YouTube. Mainly because Twitch was fine, but it never really grew, even though I wasn't doing it very often, so I didn't expect it to. But at the same time, I find the YouTube setup to be a little bit easier to use. So I'm sticking with YouTube now, mainly because the subscriber base is a bit bigger here already, so I might as well just use it. So really leaving this as a stick figure. And this one has form. Based on these studies, using the inspiration of the reference, we can now play with it. Okay, so that means these sketches are the initial studies to help me figure out what the pose is, what's going on physically, what some of the information is happening within the details of the body or whatever the case is, and I can now use that information to move it around the way I want to. So when we're talking about creativity, it's again play. I can do whatever I want from the inspiration of this pose. Now again, this may not be one-to-one. I'm not looking for that. I'm not trying to do a photocopy. I'm trying to understand how to build something right now based on a pose that I'm looking at. Okay. Now, as I said, I can do more studies to make it that much more accurate because maybe his forward chest is leaning more, head needs to be over here a little bit, knee needs to come up a little bit inside. Again, there's all these adjustments I can make, in terms of positioning, proportion, pose, all that kind of stuff. And I can keep doing this over and over and over again until I get exactly what I'm seeing in the photo. But that's not my intention. All right. So my intention right now is to just get a sense of what's happening here so I can now play with it in my own way here. So let's do that. I want to change the angle of view to be even more up angle. Okay. So I'm going to put his body. We'll do another simple study of form. One of the two drawings are on this side. I'm going to start down here and work my way up there. This time, we're going to put the shoulder here, a central line. Again, the hip is going to turn. Cross contour, turn over there. This is the front of the chest. Head's going to be up here. Shoulder, shoulder. This is the knee coming out this direction, going down that way. Foot's going to be over here. Other leg going down this direction, down this way. And this is now using the same pose that we saw earlier. And now I'm adding a different camera angle. I'm looking up at him now. Okay, up at him. So let's have the ball over here. His hand is over here. Other hand's going to go this direction and coming across the body that way. Now, this kind of form building is something that we've been doing in dynamic sketching for decades, right? I've been doing this kind of stuff for figure drawing for decades, when I was in school. So this is not some kind of new system that has been created recently. This has been around forever, right? Form building. And what I play with is the scaling of the foot. I want that sense of foreshortening a little bit. Let's bring it up a little bit higher. So this is now the same pose, which has been now altered in the camera angle. It's all right. Now, as I try to do this, I look at it, it's like, well, I want to move this hand differently. I want to bring this ball a bit outward and increase scale. I want this to be larger also. I want there to be even stronger foreshortening. So let's bring in the sketchbook a little bit on this way. Open this up in this direction. So right here, I'm going to take the study of this one, which is inspired by the card, and now push it more, but get the details and the information of what I want from this character more. So this time, let's go straight in. I'm not going to build it. I've already built it now multiple times. Now, for those of you that are following along, I would say build it again and add those details, right? Things like features of hair or eyes or clothing and whatnot. You can add to it as you layer from the base of the form. But for me right now, I'm going to go from this to here into something a bit more realized directly into the sketch. So I'm not going to start where we started with this one. And most of you will. You'll start from the very beginning as the exact same spot as you did. But because I've studied it and I know where things are generally going to be and what I want to change, I can start anywhere in the sketch. All right. So what I'm going to start with is the ball. Let's put the ball out here. And the hand is going to be wrapped underneath it. As I said, I'm going to actually push the stylization of this a little bit. So I'm going to stretch his proportions a bit more. Let's put the shoulder here. As I'm sketching, make sure I'm centered properly. Jersey's going to come up that direction. Head's going to be up here. I'm going to have his arm a little bit higher. He's got that sleeve on, coming across the body. And we'll have his hand position a little bit different. Now, I'm not necessarily looking at the photograph anymore as much. It's always there more for your own visual context to know that I'm using this from here to here. But I'm not necessarily using it myself. Now, if you do have a reference of some type, definitely don't refrain from using it. It's going to help you. So the folding of the clothing this direction. Based on this form, I'm going to have it come down this way, wrap around. And we'll get into the lower portion of the torso as the jersey, the shorts that is, wraps around this way. Knee comes forward up this direction. I'm going to actually turn that leg inwardly and increase scale and stylize by stretching things out. Put it on this side as well too, going this way. And his foot will increase in scaling to make that foreshortened effect to be larger. Let's go with the leg going this way, stretch his knee out, and kind of like use stylized shapes. To get that sense of energy. Scale change again from the back to the front. I want to make sure you can see the top of the head. And I like being able to contort and move and design the body in different ways like this. Because again, we can follow it pretty much down to the T we did earlier. But once I do a study that's much more natural to the proportions that you have in the human body, sorry, hold this properly. From here, which is based on the card, we can now then change the angle, but now we can also distort proportions, which makes it a little bit more stylized because the stylization will give you a bit more of a visually interesting, stylistic, dynamic kind of action. It's not realistic, but that's the thing about stylization is that I can play with it. It's my decision as to what I want to do. And there really is no right or wrong per se when it comes to stylization. It's all based on what you feel stylistically you favor, right? And that's built over time of things you've seen from cartoons and things that are already somewhat stylized, and you pull from them as inspiration. Now we can start to kind of fine tune the image. We use line weight as well too in terms of this, adding a bit more details. Question here is Virtual SE is saying I so often get caught up trying to replicate the reference rather than play around and learn many things, and that's exactly what we're talking about. It's so hard to let go of what you're seeing here because without being able to let go, you'll never be able to play with things that you have here. Um, how do I get over that? Well, practice is one thing. Putting yourself in that situation over and over again, right? And you may not necessarily get it to the level that you wanted to, but it's not a overnight success thing. It's a gradually progressive thing that happens over time. It might take you a while. For others, a lot less time. But either way, hopefully you'll find it, right? Let me adjust the lighting a little bit. Which sport do I enjoy the most? For figure drawing references, you enjoy UFC fighters. That's great. Actually, funny enough, I have a set of or a box of UFC cards right here. I already opened these. I haven't had a chance to go through. I mean, I'm not gonna grade any of this stuff, but I've already gone through some of the cards and got some interesting ones. And we have a bot in here already. Let me see if I can get rid of this. Remove. Okay, hopefully that's done it. Yeah, what? Yeah, these are some of the UFC cards that I have. So yeah, UFC could be great also. Honestly, it could be a great inspirational side of things. I would definitely use them. So poses like we have here, fighting stances to actual striking, could be fun. I like using boxes a lot. My primary sport that I like to focus on that's difficult, and many of you already know, is arm wrestling. I find arm wrestling to be extremely challenging to do actual studies of, and I focus on both figures, right? With a lot of stuff we have here, like sports of NBA or otherwise, you can focus on a single player. But in arm wrestling, you gotta have both, and that makes it super challenging because scale then matters, interaction matters, the idea of tension and pull and push matters. So you got to be able to actually balance that stuff really, really well. Difficult, but fun in some ways. What are we going to have a new subject for 2023 online courses? Ali, welcome. In terms of dynamic sketching, it always alters to some degree, a few here and there. There are some of the more permanent ones that always stays, right? So things like the insects and well, that can also switch out as well too, because sometimes I go for fish. The ones that primarily stay are going to be like the animals and the bone structure. Vehicles switch out between like the trains to military vehicles to airplanes. So within that, there's rotations and stuff. But anything brand new, if you have suggestions, let me know. But I haven't thought about it just yet. I tend to kind of keep it to those rotations primarily. What point were you able to do this by imagination, and should that be a goal to get to? The goal for you is based on what you set for yourself. If it's always been determined by what you see for others, is that really your goal, or a goal that you're seeing from others that you're following along with? Right? You may not even know what your goal is at that point, which is why you have to be involved in producing to start to hone in on what that might be for you. At first, the imitation happens. You see others that are going for certain pursuits, and you kind of follow along. But there has to be a maturity beyond that, which is it only about achieving what others are going for? Most people will. And again, it may be appropriate, but you won't know until you actually try, right? Um, But for me, in terms of being able to draw from imagination, to be honest with you, I drew from the imagination as a kid all the time. Out of characters that I liked, I used to draw Garfield a lot, The Simpsons, the Ninja Turtles, dinosaurs, comic characters like Wolverine and Spider Man. And what I would do is I would copy them from the things I would see, but I would also just draw them from the imagination. They wouldn't look very good, but I would do that all the time. I still have an old sketchbook from when I was a kid of all those characters. And they're crappy and they're just one angle, but I would imagine scenarios and stories and actions and fight scenes. And I would draw them as a kid, 10 years old, as much as I could, right? Because it was play. It wasn't for anything but for myself. Let's go into a little bit more of details on the figure here. Going into the fingernails, the sleeves will have a little bit of wrinkling. Of that. I like to incorporate things like visual effects, trails, to give you a sense of motion and movement. Obviously, it's not reality. It's not like he has actual flames and stuff coming off of him, but I like to incorporate that. It's just fun. And then we also add things like suggestion of detail, indication of information. You don't have to realize every single bit of information equally as to what you see in a photograph. Do I ever run weekend classes? So these mostly are for weekdays. I mostly do weekdays mainly because it's, again, online, and I try to hit multiple time zones, and mostly weekdays because that's when I want to work. Weekends I try to take off, right? Because I want my weekends free. But right now I teach primarily one weekend class on a Saturday, and I taught them online at first, but now I have in-person classes here in LA, Pasadena. So it's going to actually take over my online class at this point. I'll most likely retain the in-person class on Saturday mornings here in Pasadena itself. Online will always be weekdays. And if you have any questions about the online classes of how they run, what's some of the logistics behind it, let me know, and I'll tell you everything. So here we have now the action of that pose going through. Let's add a little bit of the features of details on his face. And just further accents of information. And what I'm going to do next is kind of go into the little drop shadows, kind of something we had done beforehand in this demo earlier, which is what I had done into the details here, just kind of dropping in shadow shapes and whatnot. We'll do the same action over on this guy. Tips for being a good art teacher: being able to listen. Showing and explaining and always kind of talking is good and to kind of communicate, but at times to be able to sit and just kind of listen to what some of the students are going through, because we would treat it first as an overall group, and you can't necessarily over singularize the focus to your information to just one person, but once in a while they kind of need it. You got to be able to just sit and kind of go to their level and understand the things they're going through. And so your experiences also then matter. You should have gone through similar kinds of educational to professional experiences that will guide them in their situations. Not to say that it's going to be similar or exactly the same, but there can be connective elements there. So being an instructor, having the wide range of experience is important. So being an instructor who are coming out of school like immediately, of course, I want to recommend. And I have a lot of students today that are doing this. They graduate and they go to be an instructor. Like, well, you are still lacking then a lot of experiences about the things, living, working, careers and stuff. And I'm not saying you have to spend 20 years doing that, but have at least something, right? Your hiring process, how did you get a job? What kind of pay did you get? How did you even negotiate that? How did you contracts? What's the corporate field look like? What's the freelance world look like? What's it like working in different industries? that experience, as you then go back to being a teacher, has real world application, right? But if you're coming from a student to get your skill sets up and then automatically go to being a teacher, I don't think it really works. But unfortunately, not to say unfortunately, but more in the case that what's happening in reality is that that's what's going on now. I have a handful of people that I know who are former students of mine who went to go teach. Now, I'm not going to say they should stop teaching, right? I mean, they're going to want to do what they want to do, and I wouldn't say they should not do that. But I'm saying for the purpose of education, for the positive experience of learning from somebody that has then the wide range of that would probably be beneficial, right? Um, that's what I would want if I was a student from an instructor, knowing that that person's gone through things that I can ask questions to, that they'll have some form of answer for it. Not really even an answer, but at least an idea, right? Is the mentorship part of the classes? No, it's an independent thing. So the mentorships are singular. I only take on one or two people a session. Right now, I'm talking to one person to get started on real soon. Um, and they're 8 weeks, and they run for 2 hours a week, live, kind of calls. And I do drawovers, and we do plans or curriculum as to what they want to work on. But I don't just take anybody. That person that wants a mentorship with me has to connect to me through email, and then of course I interview them. There has to be an approval process. Just because you say I want to take a mentorship doesn't mean you automatically do so. If I see that you're not necessarily ready for it, and when I say ready for it, I'm not saying that your skill sets are high. Okay, what I'm saying is that you're here and here ready for it, to listen to the things you want to hear, right? To be able to actually act on things that I can also depend upon, that you'll be disciplined to do so, that you'll follow through on the things I request. Those are the things I look for, right? That sense of hunger, the sense of need that needs to be there. I would mostly recommend people that have it more skilled do take the mentorship more than the fundamental base level, mainly because at a fundamental level you need more experience of other people too, being in a class, other students. Just learning from someone as an instructor, I'm 20 years in advance of many of the students that are there. It doesn't really work all the time because there's too much of a distance in experience. So for someone who's gone through a couple of years of school and are building a portfolio, a project, trying to get a job, that's when a mentorship really works, in my opinion. But I understand that people are like, I want an instructor to show me the fundamentals as a one-on-one. Again, it can be so one-sided that you don't have any sense of context of how other people are going through something like that, that you can feel also somewhat lacking and lost in things. No matter how much that experience of the other person is giving to you, you don't see the actual difficulties of one person going through it as you observe from others, because the instructor's going to do it and be like, oh, that's so simple, but as you try, it's like, oh, it's so hard, and the instructor's like, do this and do this and do this, and you're like, I still don't get it. A good instructor can still help you, and again, it's not to say that in a mentorship at a younger level or a fundamental base level is not going to help. It will, but I think there's a lot more to gain as you watch multitude of other people going through what you're going through, so in terms of mentorships, I would actually wait till later periods. What do I think of what do you do if you're struggling with subtlety, curving lines, and anatomy? Well, can you be more specific, Josiah, in terms of like what regions are you talking about? Is it like within the anatomical indication? Is it within the gesture? Is it within the construction form? Um, if you can try to be specific on it, I'll try to do my best to think about how I would answer that. But I'm not really quite sure what you mean in terms of the subtlety of curving lines in anatomy. What is it in context to? Okay, we're gonna go in there and start to knock in some darks. So maybe we'll go into like his hair. We'll separate the dark and the light. Let me zoom in a bit more for you too. Okay, got some of the shadow shade underneath his chin. Let's go for some of the facial hair down here. And this kind of adds that little bit of that contrast and dark and line weight that solidifies that drawing in terms of that information of detail. Again, making it feel a bit more solid in terms of completion to a degree. Let's do it behind his hand over here. And what these are basically just kind of drop shadows, areas in reach where light is less likely to hit. And so it could represent a cast shadow or a form shadow, or crevices and spaces and things in between where just light is absent from. It can also be a stylistic choice. It's not necessarily always logical based on light and value. It could be based on a region of area. You just want to generate a little bit of contrast. I can also use the dark to help frame, to push out certain silhouettes of regions of parts as well too. Miguel is asking, how do you recommend studying my book, the Dynamic Sketching Bible? Well, of course, going through it linearly, going from the beginning to the end, is recommended. The first chunk, which is the exercises, lines, circles, cubes, form of volume, cross contours, hatching lessons, should be engaged in more often than not. Don't just read through that first section and just practice those exercises a couple times and move on. Incorporate that as a daily regiment. Okay, so you choose from like a handful of exercises. So let's say one day you're doing a study of like an animal, right? Before you actually start, for 5 minutes, do the actual exercise and choose from which ones you want to go for. Maybe I want to do first line exercise of straights and arcs. Then I want to draw a couple of cubes. 5 minutes. Then move on. Then go to your actual study of like an animal, right? From there, it's like, okay, next day, I want to study a different thing, a car. You go back into your studies of exercising. I'm going to do the hatching exercise. I'm going to do the form relationship exercise and a volume exercise. 5 minutes. You do those, and you move on. So the first quarter of that book is something that you have to be able to incorporate as a discipline of repetition daily, every single day. I don't care if it's just 5 minutes, right? But it's a way to warm up, to get ready, to then move into the actual work you got to do, which could be subject matter based of the book. It could be, again, the insects. It could be the cars. And you would choose then references associated to that, and it could be references closely related to the book, or of your own choice. So you can also then make it more difficult by finding subject matter that is not relatable within the same family, but it's not the same exact kind of subjects. Maybe a bug you'll choose not in the book itself, right? And from there to be able to actually problem solve it. So you're asking. So Josiah was asking about construction of the limbs. How do you draw the lines well enough so they are proportionate? So to proportion things properly, we want to be able to judge distance from points of landmarks, right? From an elbow to a wrist, elbow to a shoulder, from the top of the torso, the shoulders down to the hips. And of course, that's gauged based on looking at the reality of anatomy and proportion of the human form, photograph references, or drawing figures in live. But either way, building up that sense of understanding and confidence through very much fundamental practice enables you to actually then hone in on that more naturally just by imagination, right? So you don't necessarily need the reference all the time to kind of show you exactly where things are. I could draw this pose without that reference, even from the very beginning when we started drawing it, to gauge proportion of things. Now, right now, I'm stylizing a little bit, so I'm extending, elongating, changing scale because I'm trying to push dynamics of the actual pose. But in the reality of stuff, the idea of judging space in between is as simple as repetition. You repeat and you come to a conclusion. Oh, that looks off. It's too long. It's too short. And you repeat and you correct it. You hone in on the accuracy. You're not going to get it perfect the first time. So as you look at something, let's say like a human arm, shoulder to elbow to under the wrist, whatever pose you're in, can you then look at that, because you're not going to walk up to a human figure, right, and measure it by a ruler and get a sense of like, oh, this is like 10 inches long, and I'm going to take that number and convert it down to centimeters. You're not going to do this. You look at it. I think it's about that long, and you try to draw on the page, and maybe you're off, but that's okay. You allow yourself to experiment with proportion to hone in on the accuracy of what you see in observation. But it has to happen through, again, mileage. The more you repeat it, you start to get closer to the trueness of the thing. Starkey's asking, is your turn to write or direct a comic? I'm trying to figure out what the question is. Are you asking about like what you should start with to write or to direct? I mean, directing. I'm assuming is to like art direct or something like that. Clarify that for me if you can, Starkey. I understand that maybe language can be difficult to process and much more difficult, things like this in terms of how to make stuff. But clarify a little bit more information if you can for me. Tactic Tank is asking, you ever use gray tone paper? I'm addicted to it. You use a Kuretake Bungee brush pens and Jelly Roll white pens for highlights. That's great. Yeah, the gray tone paper from Strathmore is fantastic. I like the gray tone. I use a lot of the earth tone, and the Strathmore books are cheap and easy to find. But yeah, that's really a great way to approach it because the tone paper is a value that you use as like a 40%. You go down in value with the pencils or pens, and you go up in value with the color pencils or white gel pens, right? And that's what Aaron Blaze does a lot of the times, and so I've done it for dynamic sketching all the time as well too. It's again, like I said, not a new process, but a very much a tried and true method. So again, we're going into the shadow shapes in between. After we wrap up here, what I'm probably going to be doing is looking up some of these cards. I like to research them a little bit in terms of their rarity and if it's worth grading or not. I have a bunch of additional card boxes I just recently bought um, because of Black Friday. I went to a local comic shop here in Pasadena, and they were going at 50% off everything, which was amazing. So I picked up all these boxes, and they had them in their glass drawer. And these are 90s basketball cards. So some of them are priced at like 150 bucks, but this was 50% off. These are all 50% off. So I picked up all these boxes at the comic shop because they're so cheap. Um, Boxes like that on eBay go for like $200-300, but I paid like 60-70 bucks for them. So I ended up getting all of them because I could do some hunting for Jordan cards. Did I have to direct a comic or write one? And what were difficulties within those? What were those difficulties? It's quite all right, Starkey. So I've written one, and I've actually, obviously developed my own graphic novel. So I've had to art direct and world build and do the actual, developmental process of making the comic and distributing it and selling it and that kind of stuff. So in terms of writing it, yes, I had to. And what are the difficulties, or I guess the even the I guess the difficulties between those two, right? What were those difficulties? What you're asking? Well, for one thing, I'm not a writer. The comic that I put together for the comic The Blacksmith scared the crap out of me. And I mention it like this all the time to my students that that project that I generated from The Blacksmith scared me because I don't know how to write a script, right? And it's my world. I created it. I have my characters. I researched in terms of what it looks like and designed the thing. I can generate that stuff for you guys all the time. I can do this for companies every project that I work on, visually creating the things that don't exist. But if you're asking me to write a story from an arcing kind of like development and also dialogue and conversation, that kind of stuff, I don't know how to do that, right? I'm not a writer. I'm terrible at writing. My English is actually very poor in grammar. Um, so that made me very nervous. But the thing is, I thought about how am I going to problem solve this? I want to make this comic and I don't want to write it. So what do I do? I thought about maybe I should just hire somebody. I was going to pay somebody to help write this for me. And that was my initial intention. And everyone I talked to afterwards, like, I asked them, like, should I make this comic? How should I do it? I want to maybe hire somebody. Everybody was like, don't hire somebody. Just do it yourself. Just write it. And it's going to be terrible, you know? And so just accept it. It's just like the idea of this. When you first start sketching and drawing, you have this expectation of what you've seen around you and you want it to be good because you care so much. But everyone's saying you obviously have to just practice. Mileage, 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 right? You got to do all that work into it to eventually get better, as I'm even talking about it right now. But I couldn't apply those into my own thoughts and mentalities of writing. And it has to be grown and nurtured, and the experience has to grow from it, and it eventually will become better. But the problem again is, as I'm developing this project, which is like this big thing for me, I want to make sure I'm starting off correctly. So it becomes very scary. Um, but I did it. How did I do it? Well, I wasn't going to sit there and type out a script. I can't write like that. What I had to do is combine my strength. I had to realize what I was good in, which is to visually storytell. I could draw the things out of my imagination and give myself scenarios and thoughts about what the overall book is about. the specifics about those panels and pages can be problem solved through thumbnailing. So as I wanted to make the whole graphic novel, which was like 80 pages, I then thumbnailed the comic panels as I wrote. I wrote maybe what the dialogue was, what the characters were doing, the panel, camera shots. The overall book itself was supposed to be just an action book, just a fight sequence of a creature and the character. But the lead up to that was about him trying to find the position of where the weapon is and whatnot. So I had to create some form of logical sense of where he's going and why it's starting. So instead of writing, like I said, I drew it. I did 2 rounds of thumbnails. I did small little thumbnails and wrote the script out, page after page after page. And then went back to the beginning. I edited it. I then did bigger thumbnails and redrew those panels again. And I showed it to a friend. I said, "Does it make sense? I just have these crappy little dialogue sequences. Does it actually, work? Even if it's super simple." And I showed it to 3 people. And they're like, "It's fine. It's simple, but it's okay." And then I had it, checked in terms of like the grammar and the writing. And a friend did it for me and corrected it. It's hard. It's like, I'm so bad at this, and I felt embarrassed, but you had to go through it. And so they fixed everything, and then I then started actually making the pages from there. So this took me 2 years to make. 80-page comic graphic novel, full color. I hand drew it on black, paper with brush pen, and I painted it in digital, and then I published it myself. I went to Kickstarter, and then I printed it at a printer that I know of. I distributed it myself, and I took it to shows to sell it starting this year. So 100% of it was me, right? The idea, the design, the writing, the structure. Of course, I had help. And it wasn't just 100% just me. It was other people there too. But it was difficult for sure. Am I glad I did it? Yeah. Do I want to do it again? I'm still like, the second book, people want it. People are asking, like, when's the next book coming out? I'm like, oh man, that first one was strained. 2 years of hard work. It's like, do I want to do that again? And I have to. I want to do it again because I want to continue the book. I like it, that the idea and the story so much. I want to keep going with it. So next year, I'll probably have to go through those pains again. But will it be a little bit easier? Probably, because I've already now gone through the first one. I know what to expect a little bit, you know? At least I've already established the story in the world in the first book. I just have to continue it now, right? Patrick is asking, something you've been trying to keep in mind when drawing lately is the use of more interesting shapes. Asymmetry is something I found helps, but I was wondering if you have any tips. Um, that's a difficult one, actually. It's a good question, especially in terms of the idea of shape language. Is asymmetry the answer? It can create dynamics because symmetry being flattened may not necessarily help in creating interesting pose. As you can see here, the asymmetry of the foot, but this is also logical based on the idea of front and back, right? Um, so is that really truly asymmetry? It's more about the pose of space and depth. But in terms of shape language, the design of shape is a difficult one. When it comes to the idea of shape language, think a little bit more about the verbal connection again. I talked about the idea of verbal communication and visual communication, but think about when it comes to shape design of a drawing and sketch, using still the shape, which is the visual, in the combination of the verbal of a word, adjectives if you want to, right? It could be something based on simple combinations. You want it to be like, electrifying, and you want it to be, I don't know, ecstatic. And it could be also speed, and it could be aggressive. It could be whatever these words are. As you have those verbal words, think about the kind of shape that better or can communicate that information. So if I want to create a character that incorporates those thoughts of words verbally, can I convey that to the visual? And can I now design the shape to express that so that when somebody looks at the drawing, they can also imagine those words, right? So the verbal and visual communication should be tied together because you're trying to communicate something, right? I hope that makes sense, Patrick. Alison is saying, do I keep relying on reference to learn and expand my imagined library, or to try and mix it with more drawing from imagination? Both. Both. Keep using the reference as much as you want to. And then when you feel inclined to do so because it's fun, draw from the imagination. How long have we been going now? I don't even know. Hour and 45. Okay. We're pretty good on time then. We're going to be wrapping up here probably in about 10 minutes or so. This is actually almost done. And I'll just kind of go back real quickly to show people who have not really been seeing the whole thing as to what's been going on today. We did do some card breaks earlier, openings, and based on the cards, I found one that I thought the pose was really fun, and I studied it. Studied it based on the shape and the forms. Did one version of a stick figure, did another version of actual form. Then we reinterpret it based on a camera angle change. And based on that camera angle change, and then took it to another step by actually realizing the details. And this time we didn't necessarily construct form, we went directly into it, but then I also designed the shapes and the proportions a little bit more distinctly to match to the idea of what I'm trying to convey through the action of the pose. And so now I'm using line and contrast and shadow shapes to add a bit more density and clarification, but also style to really kind of like push it further. Refines the drawing and makes it just visually a little bit more compelling. Starkey is asking, did you come to have strict teachers, and what kind of exercises did they do, or how long did those classes last? You have a lot of doubts about how long these classes last and how intense they get to be. Well, I went to art center. Each art center class, standard wise, lasts 5 hours. Okay, every week, and each. Hey, Alex, how's it going, man? Welcome. Long time no talk. Hope you're doing well. Art Center, again, like I said, a standard class is 5 hours long, and a typical student is taking up to like 3 to 4 classes a term. And that lasts for 14 weeks, and it's very intensive. Each class probably demands minimally 10 hours of homework a week. And so when you get to like midterms and finals, you will find that most students will double that. So they could be working 30 to 40 hours a week standard, up to 60, 70, 80 hours a week in midterms and finals, if not more so. So it's like a full time job. It is very intensive. In terms of the exercises, again, you have to be specific here, Starkey, because based on what the class is about, there are many kinds of exercises. Based on the class that I teach, that I took at Art Center, we will do a lot of like basic hand muscle memory exercises, building form and shape, doing observational techniques, building structures like this, and training our eyes to see the world in that way, which is difficult, but mileage and practice is constant. But of course, taking your own classes, you start to find out the level of its intensity. In each school, each class is very different from each other, especially when you go online as an independent student. It's very different than being in a university because the stakes are a little bit less risky. Because when you go to a university, there's a degree with a grade that goes to it. So if you don't succeed in that class of getting a grade that passes, you can't move on, right? So you got to be able to do a satisfactory level of completion. But in an online class, that doesn't matter. You do what you can. Some people just drop off, right? So sometimes you don't really maximize the engagement of an online school as well as you could because there's no real consequence other than losing a bit of money and time. Yeah, not a problem, Vigo Hart. What online learning resources and books would you recommend the most for aspiring artists? Well, Turo, I would say, the typical schools that are out there online are going to be first CGMA. And CGMA is one of the first online schools that I started with over 10 years ago. There are now places like CDA, Concept Design Academy, which was in person at first and now mostly gone online. Brainstorm Academy, which, first was in person and now mostly online. And each of those schools offers varying degrees of experiences. Some better, some worse, but I don't know all of them because I haven't taken classes there. I've taught at most of those schools, but they're my classes that I teach primarily similarly through most of the places. Um, but there is no worse or best. It's about the personal experience of things can differ from person to person. The only way to find out is to actually try them, honestly, right? You can get advice from other students who've gone there, but the thing is, unfortunately, it's not your experience, it's theirs, and it just gives you an idea. Hopefully that's an incentive to go try, but at the end of the day you have to be the one to actually be involved to find out, well, that was a good one or not. And if it was a good class, and maybe I'll continue that school and maybe the other classes that are there. So the first thing you can just do is get involved. Just try one or two classes and find out based on some of those schools I just mentioned. Book wise, there's so many to list, and recently, what last stream I mentioned, Framed Ink as being one of them. I still stand by that one, honestly. Framed Ink. Let's actually push the value dark and the back leg to put it in silhouette and dark value. But yeah, for those of you that are joining for the first time, thanks for watching. This is a live stream that combines hobbies of interest, art, talk, conversation, education of industry, personal experiences, and based on my own experiences. Don't take them as dogma or answers. I don't have any solutions for anybody, but it gives you an idea. Okay. And so if you want to watch more things in the future, I'm going to primarily stay on YouTube into the future itself. Next one I'll be up into most likely will be Friday, which might also be one of those community-based drawing Magma Studio ones together. Um, and so subscribe, if you want to see more into the future. So this will be one of my main platforms. As my other main platform is Instagram. So those two I'll probably be pushing the most. And I do this mainly because I enjoy being live in front of people and drawing and talking and conversing and things. It makes me better, especially what I do primarily for work, teaching. Uh, and it's a good way to obviously, stay within the interests that I have, hobby wise too. So it's an excuse to buy more cards and open them, if anything else. And Kit is asking, can we say that our art equals our knowledge of fundamentals plus our design choices? Equals your knowledge of fundamentals plus your design choices? Only a fraction of it. Maybe just half of it. Because there's another half within your art, which is equating that result of expression that is culminated by not just your fundamentals, but also you, what you've gone through, your story, your life. And if you don't have a life because you haven't gone out and done stuff, and maybe you are maybe just very young, or you've denied yourself of experiences of things because you felt like you should only be working on fundamentals, then you are missing certain elements of equation or the structure and process to give you a better resulting equalness towards your art piece. Now, that doesn't mean you're too late. You can start now, experience more stuff, have curiosity and stuff, right? Go play, go find out things, learn more, take interest in classes and education that is not only just art. Maybe it's within history or sciences and philosophies, or I don't know. I've taken classes on many different kind of things. I've taken classes on geriatrics, study of senior citizens. I've taken classes on theology. I've taken classes in biology. So diversify your educational system, not system, more of your educational interests. Because if you want to become an artist, you have to have a lot of these kind of different things of experience in life to be able to culminate and extract from to then really express something that is truly you. But then who are you, right? What makes you you? What makes you unique? What are your interests at that point then, right? Is it just the similar trends and following of interest that everyone else has? That's fine, and you can still capitalize on that. But even within that world, you might be able to find something slightly unique that offers to the world that is of you, you know? Now, we're not talking about soapboxing and expressing your opinions about what people should be doing, but things that you love, things that you find passion towards. You share that as a way to help grow a community. Um, that's the idea, right? I hope that makes sense. Hey, Alex, how's it going, man? You're asking how long have you been practicing shooting the bow? I used to do that, but you stopped. Well, I started. What has it now been 2 years? When we went shut down is when I picked up archery because I was indoors all the time. But I moved to a location here in Pasadena, which has a really big backyard. I got like 10,000 square feet. So I set up a whole safety net, and my targets are on the ground. So I shoot from maybe about 20 feet away only, not that far. And I started getting into the Asian bows, the Asiatic bows, because I just had so much interest in like the Mongols for a while. I was researching the Mongols like crazy because of the blacksmith comic. And I was doing the blacksmith comic, and I was seeing a lot of archery stuff and bow making from the Asiatic bows, from the Mongols to then also like in places up in like Turkey to the Middle East, and also then further places in Asia, from China to Korea. And Korea has such a big archery history that goes into it. And so I started getting interested in researching a lot on YouTube. I just watched tons of videos. Um, and then it went from like the Asiatic bows to the Mediterranean style shooting and the European bows, long bows, and going into the even Native American, North American bows. From the Comanche and other tribes, amazing style of shooting, and I just got really into it. I was hanging out with my friend Manu Carrasco a lot, and he's really into archery. He hunts, and we just would talk about it. I don't hunt. I never hunted, but I just had the interest in the skill, right? So he would show me stuff, and we just talk about it. We'd be constantly outdoors. We would do a lot of trips to Yellowstone. We do a lot of mountain hiking. We go track mountain lions, And so we just be outdoors a lot. So I just got more into the outdoor elements as well too. And so for me, I just like being outside and doing something. So shooting the bow was a big part of it. It kept me physically active a little bit, but I like picking up on a new skill set that was, you know, a little bit more physicality based. As we talked about this earlier about sports, I actually love sports, playing it too. Even though I never had interest in playing it like seriously because my stature is not built for it. At the same time, I'm actually able to pick up physical things really well. I get that from my dad's side. They're all larger in sizing. Like my dad's like 5'9", 5'10". My brother's like 6'2". So I have two brothers that are 6'2", 6'3", and I'm like 5'6". So I got the short end of the stick on that height side. But whatever, I got my ability to sketch and draw, but I still enjoy sports. So we would also do a lot of like martial arts kind of stuff, and I would play with them when we were kids. And I'm still today, I still love being physically active. So archery like really kind of fit within that combination of things, which is like the historical aspect, the cultural things, the skill base increasing of just the play upon the archery, but then also the physicality of it. So increasing the strength and being able to pull, heavier bow draws. My longbow is like a 60-pound draw. I have Asiatic bows which go from 35 to 40, and I would never pull like a war bow. I would never go up to like 100. It's too much. I would never do that. 60 is my limit, I think. Honestly, that's even heavy, honestly, for me, but I probably stay within 45, 50 to be my normal average of bow draw. And that's plenty, especially with what I'm doing, which is more recreational. And I honestly should be shooting like 30, pound bows per draw. But I still like to like experience varying degrees of level because I like training to get to that point of like being able to achieve it. So when I worked out a lot, like super heavily for like from 2005 to about 2016, I mean I pushed my body to the limit. But I like to find that out. I don't do it anymore, but I don't know. I kind of get obsessive in things. So when I bite on something like that, like, I stay on it forever. But if you ever want to shoot, man, if you're still in the area, Alex, let me know. You can come over. I'll show you some stuff. Not that I have any proficiency in it. I just enjoy it. It's a hobby again. I actually have a Comanche bow coming. I'm working with a bowyer. He's based up in Canada. I'm doing a skill trade, so I'm doing some art for him, and he made me a bow. So he's the guy that made me the longbow. So he made me this English longbow made of yew wood, and he sent me a Comanche bow, smaller short bow made of yew as well too. But the shooting style is different. It's a short draw, and the Comanche shot very differently than European styling. Have you ever done oil painting? Tons of it. When I was a student, lots of oil painting. When I graduated, I stopped oil painting for a long time, and then I recently picked it up again a couple years ago. So I've done a total of two paintings of oil in this year, and I want to do more. I'm not very good, but I enjoy it. Painting was never really my forte because I don't really see the world in light and color. I see everything through shape and line, but I still enjoy pursuing skill sets like that. Even though it's not, the best compared to like my friends that I know, I can still infuse it, with things that I do. All right, we got the study going on right now, finishing up. But I'm hoping to launch real soon too. I'm trying to get him to send me a couple things. Manny and I are supposed to start up this podcast, and we've already recorded a couple sessions, and I want to get it out as soon as I can, even this week if possible. So look for that to come up real soon. It's called the Journey Pen Podcast between me and my friend Manny. And so people have been asking, it's like, when's it coming out? When's it coming out? It's like, I want it out sooner than later. But I'm trying to finish out the intro to the podcast at first, so I kind of need a couple things from him. So we'll get it together real soon. So look for that in the future. I know there's millions of podcasts out there, but it's not about me trying to make this become a big thing. We just do it because we just talk all the time. So we just want to have a platform to share it. That's all it is. I don't care if only 5 people watch it. We'll still do it. Alex, you're asking, how much do you feel being in good shape affects the clarity of your thought when it comes to producing your art? Yeah, I mean, I think it does make a difference, because being in relative good shape, it gives you the endurance to keep going and stay sharp and focused. If you're not in shape, it's easy to get tired, mentally and physically. But when you're in relative shape, I'm not talking about like physically like overly fit either too. But if you have a daily regimen of exercise of some type, it's gonna keep you a bit more attentive to things. You're gonna actually be able to stay awake a lot of times as well too. Some people might think it actually makes you more drained. I found the opposite. I actually like working out at night. Tons of people work out in the morning, but I prefer at nighttime because in actuality, it makes me more relaxed. People think, doesn't it amp you up? It's like, not really. I actually come down from it because it expends that energy out and I'm able to like really settle down. Not that I have a really tough time doing that, anyways, but I prefer the idea of having a bit more of a, I don't know, physical comfort, not being like slackish, but having a comfort with my own body. Again, not to be like overly like ripped or something like that. But I'm looking for the ability to endure longevity, right? Sustaining. So for me, exercising a little bit, even now as I do so, helps a lot. And so a lot of it is within things like overall body health, but a lot of it is also the idea of being able to just continue on. Um, I think I've probably been in my worst shape in the last 2 years from the pandemic because I stopped working out. Before that, for like 6, 7 years, I worked out intensively. And I was in the best shape, probably in my early 30s. I'm 41 now. So once I hit about 37, 38, it started to decline. Mainly because I stopped working out a bit more intensively because I was starting to get joint pains here and there. So I was pushing it too hard. Secondary wise, and of course, pandemic hit. So in like the last 3 years, it declined a lot more. Um, so this year I started picking up again, working out a lot, like daily, evenings. And muscle memory is there, so I'm picking it up real fast. But I'm being very careful not to like overdo it again. Because I used to pull little injuries in my shoulder primarily and my wrist. Because I would do like muscle ups and that kind of stuff, and the flags and stuff like that too. And I don't do that anymore, and I can't. I don't have the strength for it. But I want to be able to get that endurance again. Also, as I get older, it's like obviously we all know what happened to Kim Jong Il, and he was only 47. He's only 6 years older than I am. So it's like it's not only just about exercise now. I gotta consider like my diet. Uh, I don't eat necessarily the best, and I have to really consider changing things. Like maybe I become a bit more balanced upon like what I eat less of, and increasing something else of other things, vegetarian maybe. I don't know. It doesn't bother me with the idea of going like vegetarian more. Um, but again, I like meat. I have nothing against eating meat. Can archery hurt your shoulder? Yeah, it can. I actually was in pain recently, right here. It's better now. I don't feel it anymore. But man, I pulled that 60-pound bow, the long bow, and I just didn't pull it right. Just that one little moment, and it just like stretched. I just pulled it, and I just like felt it right at the end of the collarbone where there's a muscle attachment right here. It just strained it. Man, I was like, it's not that it overly hurt. It just was stiff. It was muscle stiffness. So I avoided pulling for weeks, and this took about maybe 2 weeks to heal. And it's better now. I don't feel it anymore, so I can probably pull again. So the problem with archery is that people pull from the shoulder when you should be pulling from your back, right? So your scapula to your rhomboids and your trapezoid muscles, you should be stretching outward like this, flaring at your chest, But I was using more of the shoulder to pull back because it was such a heavy bow. But I was focusing so much on the grip on the left arm, I wasn't really paying attention to this. Because in archery, in the longbow, people grip it like that when you should be gripping it more like this, right? So that way you don't get slap on the forearm. So I was paying so much attention to this part. Wasn't considering the right arm. So I pulled it so hard, I stretched a little bit right there. So I was like, oh, that hurt. But it's better now. So no pain. Yeah, I actually avoided seafood for the longest time also. Mainly because I avoided seafood due to my research in marine biology and stuff like that. I just, have a lot of respect and I guess I have a lot of like, I don't know, interest within the marine life and how much I can see within the ocean and marine life is being damaged right now. I didn't want to take from the ocean anymore. So it was kind of a bit more of a moral thing for myself. I certainly didn't, say to people like, "Oh, you should stop eating fish." Like, no, of course not. It was just for me. But recently, I kind of got back into eating seafood again, but not a lot. I only have a little bit of time. Things like mercury is one thing, but also it's more about the overfishing for myself. It's pretty terrible when you actually look into it. But this is also then within all industries of like food. Food in the West is poorly represented in how it's like cultivated, um, from everything from plant and animal, honestly. And vegans would be like, yeah, you should be going vegan style. It's like, well, going vegetarian also is quite damaging to the earth as well too. So it's just for me, it sounds like, yeah, I get you can't really change this stuff anymore, right? So for myself now, it's about, well, how do I just sustain myself and balance better going forward? Um, so it's not about trying to put a label on it either. I don't want to become this vegan or this, the vegetarian or something in between or keto or that kind of thing. It's like, no, no, I just want to eat where in a way it's going to benefit me, in a healthier lifestyle. And it's not going to necessarily over indulge in things. And, in that way. But of course, being mindful of certain parts of some things I won't touch and some things I will, for both factors of health, but also for certain things that I have connection to. Specifically, like in fishing, I still have a connection to it. I stopped fishing years ago. I used to fish a lot. I loved it. Ocean fishing, river fishing, it was my favorite thing to do. And I stopped because I don't know. I researched so much in marine life. I just love it. So, but again, I certainly don't think people should stop doing it. It's fine with me. Let's see. Did I hire a motion designer for one of my podcasts? I did not, John Albert. I know that you had reached out with this thing about classes recently too, so I apologize because I've been so busy. But I am doing an intro for it right now. But no, I haven't hired a motion designer just yet. I actually know a lot of students in art center that do motion design. Um, but I've never really gotten into it that deep because, to be honest with you, it's like, especially with like, even this podcast, that kind of stuff to me is not a priority. It's like, oh, do we have a designed logo? And I did make a logo. I did make a drawing for it. The text is kind of whatever. But that kind of stuff, I don't really put a lot of emphasis on. And I know it's like, well, you should consider branding it and making it really good package. And even this YouTube channel, right? It's like I could be doing way more of making it feel professional. But it's like, it's not that I don't care. It's just that it's not my priority. I do this because I just talk to you guys. Yeah, it could be something, and I'm sure some people would take advantage of it. But for me, this is not necessarily even any kind of monetary gain. I just do it because I just draw for fun. Uh, Again, maybe it's not the right way of thinking. Maybe I should do a better job on packaging it, representing it, so people who look at it can, have a better experience, a user experience, right? So I get that, but it's also a lot of energy and time, which I usually put somewhere else. So we'll see. We'll see. Things will also evolve naturally in terms of quality as it continues. All right, so we have this study of Trey Young we got from this basketball card, which I opened up earlier tonight, and we studied it initially based on this shape and form, and based off of something that was similar to what we did last time, building shape and forms, into the evolution of the sketch and the drawing. And for this round, what we wanted to do was actually pull from a reference, which I opened up basketball cards and say, oh, this pose is really cool. I like the overlaps of the leg and the position of the body, camera angle. And I then did a study of it real simply of a stick figure. Then we tried to change the camera angle. Then we then took it a bit further to push some of the details and stylization of things. So this experience helps me be able to generate additional poses and camera angles and dynamics of things out of my own head. And I can use a pose like this because I treat it like a puppet. Well, what if I move the leg higher or lower and the arm is up here and the basketball is over here? By repositioning stuff, I can choose the same angle. I can move it around like an actual stationary puppet, right? And I can then take a shot of my head almost. I don't see the exact picture, but I'm able to manipulate it. So as I put into the drawing, it doesn't require me to do this anymore. I did it for you guys, but I don't need to do this. I can just go straight to here. And anyways, so it kind of gives you an idea as to how that's kind of done. And this is also associated to the class that I teach, which is the dynamic figure class. The dynamic figure, the one that I offer online, is all relatable to the conversations and things that we cover in this section. Okay, so if anybody has any interest in the classes for the future with me, and if you want to do more figure-based stuff, action, posing, dynamic shots, that kind of stuff, that class may be up your alley. Consider it one day. If you do, it's great, and I will welcome you. If not, there are many other resources out there, other kinds of instructors, other kinds of schools, and a lot of great resources educationally. Anyways, next time around, I will be on hopefully on Friday, this coming Friday, for a community-based sketching and drawing format, which usually lasts an hour and a half or so. If you're interested in drawing with me on Magma Studio, all you have to do is respond to my Instagram story post, and so look out for my social media posting on that, and just reply to it on Instagram, and I'll then let you know if you've been access to it, because I only allow five people per session. And so that then invites you to draw live with me on digital formats. And when I stream it on YouTube, we're taking questions. But that will hopefully happen on Friday. If it does not happen on Friday, most likely it'll be then next Monday. So Fridays and Mondays will be the times in which I'll be most likely streaming in the future. All right. All right. Thanks, you guys. Appreciate it. I will see you all next time. Have a good night. And also, for those of you that are still on break, have a good time on the break. And I will see you all next time. Thank you.